Welcome back to the deep dive. And, you know, if you're listening right now, you are probably someone who wants to understand the really big aha moments in tech, right?
Oh, absolutely. The underlying currents.
Yeah, without getting completely buried in the information overload. So today, for you, the learner, we have something that is, frankly, just incredibly dense and timely.
It really is. I mean, we're not just talking about the usual Silicon Valley gossip today.
Right.
We're looking at a synthesis of technology, economics, and honestly, philosophy that attempts to draft a literal roadmap for human survival. It's pretty intense.
Intense is a good word for it, because in May of 2026, this manifesto was quietly published. And it basically demands that the world's leading AI developers, specifically targeting Elon Musk and Sam Altman, surrender 10% of their corporate equity.
10%, just a massive, unimaginable sum.
Exactly, to a shadow global welfare state, essentially. And the alternative, if they don't do this, according to the text, it's the end of human civilization.
Yeah, no pressure, right?
Right, so we're talking about a forced multi-trillion-dollar wealth transfer, organized entirely outside of democratic governments. And it's designed to fund this global biometric digital infrastructure to directly pay the poorest 20% of the human population.
Bypassing local corruption entirely, which is a huge part of the argument.
So today, we're going to look at the math, the madness, and this ancient spiritual prophecy that's actually behind the entire demand. It's a lot.
It's a sprawling, visionary piece of work. The author is Paramendra Kumar Bhagat, and the title of this May 2026 blog post is Sam, Elon, Cooperate on AI Safety, Compete on Commerce.
Which sounds like a standard business op-ed at first glance.
It really does. But it's so much more than a hot take on boardroom drama. Bhagat connects this localized friction between rival tech founders to a macro-level existential threat.
And then he pitches this radical economic blueprint, right?
Exactly, to end global poverty along the way. Because he sees advanced AI not just as software, but as a species-level paradigm shift.
And to really unpack this, we can't just read the one post. We're also diving into the author's massive surrounding bibliography. The links he provides in the source are fascinating.
Oh, they provide such vital context. We're talking books on the explosion of agentic AI, plans for a reorganized UN, and even theological treatises.
Right, this thing called Kaukiism. We'll definitely get into that. But first, let's figure out how a falling out over a chess-playing computer program escalated into a plan to end global poverty.
Well, actually, it was the game of Go. But
Yeah.
yes, the genesis of this entire global architecture starts with a very intimate, localized conflict.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So the text traces the inciting incident back years, way before the mass adoption of generative AI. It was a fundamental disagreement between Elon Musk and Google co-founder Larry Page.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the flashpoint was when Google's DeepMind defeated the world champion at the game of Go.
AlphaGo beating Lee Sedol. I mean, we all remember the headlines from that.
Right, but the text frames this as the moment the psychological tectonic plates really shifted for Musk. He looked at DeepMind's capability and became just profoundly alarmed by the trajectory of digital superintelligence.
But the author provides this really jarring timeline check for his May 2026 audience, right?
Yeah.
Because he writes, and I'm quoting here, "We're at 5.5 now. The world was supposed to end at 4.
Yes, that specific notation is brilliant. Surviving past version 4 to reach 5.5, it captures the ambient anxiety of the era perfectly.
It's like we were all holding our breath.
Exactly. It highlights this psychological phenomenon we're seeing across the tech sector, the moving goalpost of the apocalypse.
Right, because there was this prevailing consensus among safety researchers that reaching a GPT-4 level of capability would trigger an uncontrollable event horizon.
But we pushed through to 5.5. The models became exponentially more capable and, well, society didn't instantly collapse.
So did society not collapse, or are we just like that cartoon coyote running off the cliff, like still suspended in midair before looking down?
That's the exact tension the author's pointing out. The immediate apocalypse didn't happen, but it mutated into something much more dangerous. An unconstrained arms race.
Which brings us to the absolute paradox of Elon's trajectory in the source. Because he starts out utterly terrified of unaligned superintelligence, right?
Right.
But cut to 2026, and he is aggressively building XAI. The author bluntly states, the safety concerns are out the window.
He notes XAI is pretty good, but the implication is terrifying.
Yeah, it's like the fear of AI has been completely superseded by the fear of losing the race to build it.
Which forces us to examine the underlying motivation. The text meticulously details the power struggle over OpenAI's infrastructure.
Let's talk about that, because Musk initially wanted to be the CEO of OpenAI, didn't he?
He did, and when that demand was rejected by the board and the other co-founders, he walked away. The text also notes his previous attempt to merge OpenAI into Tesla.
Which the author contextualizes in a really interesting way.
Yeah, he points out that despite Tesla's lack of profitability at the time, it was legally a for-profit entity. He actually dismisses the whole nonprofit defense.
He calls the for-profit legal jargon a slogan at the time, right?
Exactly. And then 2 years prior to this manifesto, Musk attempted to just buy OpenAI outright.
Wait, let me stop you there. Because if you look at that pattern of behavior demanding the CEO role, trying to fold the lab into his car company, the hostile takeover, it heavily implies something else.
What's that?
That AI safety might just be a really convenient, altruistic cover story. Like, is the author actually suggesting that Musk's primary concern has always been unilateral control?
Well, the author doesn't explicitly declare Musk's safety concerns to be fraudulent, but he constructs a timeline where safety and control are functionally indistinguishable in Musk's operational philosophy.
Okay, so it's the benevolent dictator fallacy.
Exactly. From a certain psychological vantage point, a founder might genuinely believe that a world-ending technology is only safe if their specific hands are on the steering wheel.
I mean, I guess I can see the ego in that.
But the author's core critique is that this unilateral, control-obsessed approach has completely failed. Denied control of OpenAI, Musk didn't pivot to funding independent safety research.
No, he launched a competing commercial supercomputer cluster.
Right, so the attempt to control the threat simply spawned a second threat.
And the risk profile of these new systems is entirely different now, largely because of what the author labels the Netscape moment.
The Netscape analogy is absolutely vital for understanding the author's sense of urgency here.
He compares OpenAI releasing ChatGPT to Netscape launching the first popular web browser, right?
Yes, because it wasn't just a technological iteration, it was a mass distribution paradigm shift.
How so?
Well, before the Netscape Navigator browser in the mid-90s, the internet existed, but it was a command line interface used primarily by academics, the military, and, niche hobbyists.
Right, it wasn't user-friendly at all.
Netscape provided the graphical user interface that made the internet legible to the general public. It commercialized the web.
And the author posits that ChatGPT performed the exact same function for artificial neural networks.
Precisely. It extracted machine learning from the esoteric realm of data scientists and dropped it directly onto the smartphones of 1 billion consumers.
To be fair, he does give credit where it's due. He writes, "Humanity owes ChatGPT some and then some."
Right. He isn't a Luddite demanding we smash the servers. He recognizes the astronomical economic and creative value unlocked by giving the public a conversational interface to vast computational power.
But he also understands how mass deployment alters the physics of risk.
That's the crux of it. When AI was a localized experiment running in a closed sandbox at some elite university, safety just meant unplugging the server if the model behaved unexpectedly.
You can't just unplug it anymore.
No, you really can't. Today, these models are integrated into global financial systems, electrical grids, hospital diagnostics, enterprise software.
So the surface area for catastrophic failure isn't confined to a single lab anymore.
Exactly. It is interwoven with the foundational infrastructure of human civilization. The traditional containment protocols are effectively obsolete.
Which naturally leads you to the question of regulation, right? If the private sector is locked in a suicidal arms race, you would assume the author wants government intervention.
You would assume that, but he absolutely slams the door on Washington.
Yeah, he writes, and this is a direct quote, "There is nobody on Capitol Hill I'd trust to get it right."
And his dismissal of the political class isn't rooted in partisan ideology. It is rooted in the physics of time.
The physics of time, what do you mean?
While the legislative apparatus of a democratic republic is intentionally designed to be slow, it relies on committee hearings, lobbying, public debate, precedent, building consensus.
Oh, I see. It takes years to pass a comprehensive infrastructure bill, let alone regulated technology that fundamentally alters its own architecture every 6 months.
Exactly. By the time a regulatory agency drafts a framework for a version 5.0 model, the industry is already deploying version 6.0. The state is structurally incapable of pacing the technology.
Okay, so politicians are out because they're too slow. But then he immediately states, and there is no one tech entrepreneur I would want to trust with AI safety.
Right. He rejects the government bureaucracy, but he also explicitly rejects the Silicon Valley hero founder model.
He doesn't trust Elon. He doesn't trust Sam. He doesn't trust the CEO of Anthropic.
It's a wholesale rejection of our existing institutional safeguards. He surveys the landscape and concludes that neither the sovereign state nor the visionary capitalist possesses the structural integrity to manage this transition safely.
Because he views the stakes as so absolute. He frames this not as a corporate rivalry or even a geopolitical tech war between the U.S. and China.
He frames it as man versus machine.
And to describe the threat landscape, he introduces an acronym that honestly gave me chills. MADS, the Mutually Assured Destruction Spectrum.
The terminology here is incredibly deliberate. Mutually Assured Destruction, or MAD, is the Cold War game theory that governed nuclear proliferation, right?
Right. If one superpower launched a preemptive nuclear strike, the other would detect it and launch a retaliatory strike before the first warheads landed.
So the guarantee of total bilateral annihilation was the only thing preventing either side from initiating the conflict.
But the word spectrum fundamentally changes that dynamic for me.
Yeah.
Adding spectrum to MAD implies we aren't waiting for a single catastrophic button press.
Exactly. It's not a binary outcome of world exists versus world is ash. A spectrum implies a continuum of degradation.
Okay, break that down for me.
With nuclear weapons, the danger is acute and immediate. With artificial general intelligence, the danger is systemic and chronic.
So the destruction might not look like a sci-fi robot uprising.
No, the spectrum includes the total erosion of epistemic trust due to hyper-realistic deepfakes flooding elections. It includes algorithmic flash crashes wiping out pension funds in microseconds.
Or like the localized synthesis of novel pathogens by AI models instructed to optimize biological efficiency.
Exactly. You don't need a fiery apocalypse if you can slowly unravel the social, economic, and biological fabric of human cooperation. The destruction happens in stages.
And he emphasizes that this spectrum is already active. He notes that the current AI landscape is not safe forever, although so far safe.
Which brings back the anxiety of surviving version 5.5 again. We haven't hit the fatal end of the spectrum yet, but we're sliding further down it every day the arms race continues.
And this creates a seemingly insurmountable paradox in the author's logic, at least to me.
How so?
Well, he has established that governments are too slow to regulate the spectrum, and individual tech titans are too compromised by ego and commerce to self-regulate.
Right.
Yet his proposed solution for human survival relies entirely on a coalition of those exact same tech titans. This is where I struggle with the text.
I get that.
He is demanding that Sam Altman and Elon Musk, he just explicitly said he does not trust with safety, visibly, concretely, and measurably cooperate.
It's a huge ask.
He wants to completely bypass the United Nations, bypass the U.S. Congress, and place the survival of the human species into an out-of-court settlement between rival billionaires. How does that make any logical sense?
It makes sense if you view it through the lens of pure, brutal pragmatism. The author is applying a realist geopolitical framework to the corporate sector.
What do you mean by that?
In international relations, you don't negotiate nuclear treaties with your allies. You negotiate them with your enemies because they are the ones holding the weapons.
Ooh, okay.
The author recognizes that the actual leverage, the physical compute power, and the algorithmic monopolies reside exclusively within these private corporations.
Right, you can't rely on Congress to enforce a treaty when Congress doesn't own the server farms.
Exactly. The only entities capable of implementing a verifiable safety protocol are the entities actively building the threat.
He summarizes this approach with the phrase, compete on commerce, but cooperate on AI safety. It makes me think of Formula One racing.
Oh, that's a great analogy. How so?
Well, the teams are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to build the fastest, most aerodynamically aggressive cars on the planet. They will ruthlessly steal engineers from each other, hide trade secrets, battle for every millisecond on the track.
Right. Fierce competition.
But every single team must absolutely adhere to the FIA safety regulations. The exact specifications of the titanium halo over the cockpit, the impact absorption of the chassis.
Because if the cars are fundamentally unsafe, the drivers die, the spectacle ends, and the entire commercial enterprise collapses.
Exactly.
And that illustrates the concept perfectly. The author isn't asking these companies to form a monopoly or stop innovating. He wants the competition to continue driving the technology forward.
But the foundational safety architecture, the guardrails preventing the model from synthesizing a bioweapon or initiating a cyber attack, must be standardized.
Standardized, universally implemented, and transparently verified across all competitors.
Okay, so that's the safety argument. But Just as we settle into this argument about tech protocols and corporate treaties, the manifesto executes a massive, whiplash-inducing pivot.
It really does. We go straight from discussing the mutually assured destruction spectrum to proposing a radical restructuring of global macroeconomics.
This is where the author transitions from diagnosing the immediate technological threat to prescribing a systemic planetary cure.
And he uses a real-world financial anchor point for this. A proposal by Elon Musk to allocate $150 billion to the OpenAI Foundation.
I mean, $150 billion is a staggering amount of capital. But the author looks at that proposal and essentially waves it away as insufficient.
Yeah, he says it's not nearly enough.
He counters with step 1 of his blueprint. And step 1 dictates that every single AI tech entrepreneur on the planet, not just in Silicon Valley, but in China, Europe, everywhere, must surrender a flat 10% ownership of their companies.
To a newly created singular foundation, we need to pause and calculate the sheer magnitude of what is being proposed here.
It's mind-boggling.
10% equity across the entire global artificial intelligence sector. We are talking about liquidating and transferring trillions of dollars of value from private shareholders into a supranational, non-governmental entity.
It is a wealth transfer on a scale unprecedented in human history.
Truly.
And what is this foundation supposed to do with trillions of dollars in tech equity? Its singular mandated focus is to permanently end global poverty.
Specifically, the author demands direct, unconditional cash transfers to the poorest 20% of the global population.
And he even dictates the exact technological mechanism to achieve this, the Aadhaar UPI framework.
This is the critical juncture of the entire manifesto. The author is inextricably linking the prevention of an AI-driven apocalypse to the eradication of extreme poverty.
To a casual observer, these appear to be two completely distinct disciplines. One is cutting-edge computer science, the other is developmental economics.
They seem totally unrelated.
It feels like an absurd non sequitur. Imagine NASA holding a press conference to say, an asteroid is going to hit Earth in 6 months, and our only defense strategy is to cure malaria.
That's a funny way to put it, but I see your point.
I need you to explain the mechanics of how taxing an AI company in California stops a village in sub-Saharan Africa from starving, and how that, in turn, keeps the AI from destroying the world.
Okay, the connection lies in the concept of systemic planetary stability. You cannot safely deploy a civilization-altering, hyper-disruptive intelligence into a society that is already fracturing from extreme economic inequality.
Because extreme poverty breeds desperation, right?
Desperation, political instability, mass migration, resource conflict. If you drop AGI, a technology that will inevitably automate vast sectors of the global workforce, into a highly volatile, deeply unequal world.
You pour gasoline on the fires of the mutually assured destruction spectrum.
Exactly. The societal fabric will tear itself apart long before the AI achieves some terminal rogue state.
Okay, so the foundation of the house has to be stable before you install a nuclear reactor in the basement. I understand the philosophical link now.
It's all about stability.
But let's look at the actual mechanism he proposes, Aadhaar and UPI. What makes this specific framework the silver bullet for global poverty? Why not just fund the UN World Food Program or the IMF?
Because traditional aid distribution networks are notoriously inefficient. They are frequently hampered by local corruption, massive bureaucratic overhead, and inadequate banking infrastructure in the developing world.
Ah, so the money gets lost along the way.
Constantly. The author is proposing a direct technological bypass. Aadhaar is India's biometric digital identity system. It assigns a unique, verifiable digital ID to every citizen based on fingerprint and iris scans.
And UPI?
The Unified Payments Interface. It's the underlying protocol that allows instant, zero-cost, interoperable money transfers directly between mobile phones.
Completely circumventing traditional retail banks.
Exactly.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, if you want to distribute a basic income to the poorest 20% of humanity, you can't mail them physical checks.
No, definitely not.
And you can't route the money through local warlords or corrupt regional governments. You need an unhackable digital identity tied to a mobile wallet.
Precisely. You need a frictionless, peer-to-peer financial routing system at the base layer of society. It's essentially building TCP/IP for human welfare.
Wow. And the author's ambition here is absolute. He casually states that if a country currently lacks this biometric and financial infrastructure, the foundation will build it.
That throwaway line is wild.
It really is. He is proposing that a foundation, funded by a 10% tax on private tech companies and managed by rival billionaires, will just enter sovereign nations and unilaterally build out a biometric surveillance and digital currency network for their poorest citizens.
It is the definition of a shadow global government. It completely usurps the role of the nation-state in providing social safety nets.
Because he believes the nation-state has failed.
He believes the nation-state has failed to solve poverty, just as it has failed to regulate AI. Therefore, the hyper-capitalists who build the future must be forced into an out-of-court settlement to manage the societal fallout of their creations.
They are surrendering 10% of their empires as the cost of doing business in a stable world.
Right.
But let's bring this back to reality for a second. Because if I am a tech founder or a board member or a massive institutional investor like Vanguard or BlackRock backing these AI companies,
Yeah, they have a huge stake in this.
you are asking me to give away 10% of the most valuable asset class in the history of capitalism. Setting aside the tidal wave of shareholder lawsuits claiming breach of fiduciary duty, how do you actually enforce this?
It's a massive logistical and legal hurdle.
If you try to suddenly liquidate 10% of the global AI sector to fund cash transfers, you would instantly crash the global equities market. The math just doesn't work.
The author anticipates the friction of this massive capital extraction, which actually brings us to the operational elegance of Step 2 in his blueprint.
Oh, right. Step 2.
This phase is specifically engineered to manipulate the psychology of the billionaire founders themselves. He lays out a highly specific financial maneuver.
Which is?
He says, what you will consume, consume. What you will not consume, do a split on your shares so you keep your voting power, but give the money part away to that same foundation.
Let's dissect this split. He is addressing the billionaires directly here.
He is.
He says, take whatever capital you require to maintain an absolute zenith of luxury. Buy the super yachts, the private jets, the sports franchises. Consume what you will consume.
Live large.
Right. But for the remaining 99% of your net worth, which at that echelon is just abstract numbers sitting in a brokerage account, you perform a specialized stock split. You separate the voting rights from the financial dividend.
This shows a really sophisticated understanding of corporate governance structures. By retaining the voting shares, the founders maintain absolute dictatorial control over their companies.
So they still sit on the board, they still hire the engineers, they still dictate the technological trajectory of the AI.
Exactly, but the non-voting dividend-yielding shares, the actual financial upside of the technology, are legally transferred to the Poverty Eradication Foundation.
It's a fascinating psychological hack. He's betting that for someone like Elon Musk or Sam Altman, the accumulation of personal wealth maxed out in utility billions of dollars ago.
Because the ultimate currency for these men isn't money, it's agency.
It's the power to impose their vision on the future. He is offering a devil's bargain. You get to keep the crown, you get to steer the ship, but you must surrender the royal treasury to the peasantry.
And it resolves the fiduciary and market crash concerns as well. You aren't liquidating 10% of the market on a Tuesday.
I see.
You are routing the future dividends and the structural value of the companies directly into the foundation's endowment, which then utilizes the Aadhaar UPI rail to distribute liquidity globally over time.
But I have to push back on the human element here. Imagine you spent your entire life bleeding for your company, outmaneuvering rivals, sleeping on the factory floor.
Like Musk did at Tesla.
Right. If you structurally strip away the ultimate financial reward, the dragon's hoard at the end of the quest, does the system still function? Can a founder maintain that ruthless competitive ferocity that drives innovation if they know the monetary upside belongs to a global welfare fund?
It's a valid question. Does capitalism actually survive this model?
Right.
Well, the author's explicit argument is that traditional capitalism is not going to survive anyway, so the old incentive structures are moot.
Really? He thinks capitalism is already dead.
This entire manifesto is underpinned by a profound philosophical shift. He states that both he and Elon Musk mathematically calculate that advanced AI and autonomous robotics are accelerating us toward an age of abundance.
The age of abundance. The concept that we will eventually reach a post-scarcity economy where energy, computation, and physical labor are so cheap they're effectively free.
Exactly.
But then the author drops a detail that completely derails my expectation of a standard tech bro futurist essay. He casually notes that this impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago.
That single sentence dramatically alters the gravity of the text.
It really does. We are no longer merely analyzing a macroeconomic thought experiment. We are reading a document that equates the technological singularity with ancient spiritual prophecy.
He is mapping the output of silicon microchips onto a theological timeline.
But despite this prophesied utopian endpoint, the author issues a severe, almost frantic warning. He insists that simply aiming for abundance is not enough.
Humanity requires an engineered, smooth transition to cross the gap between our current reality and that future state.
He warns that without this foundation acting as a societal buffer, ending poverty along the way, there is not a small chance they might together drive us off the cliff.
And we need to clarify what the cliff is. The cliff isn't a rogue superintelligence turning us into paperclips.
What is it then?
The cliff is the catastrophic societal collapse that occurs in the temporal gap before abundance is fully realized. Consider the logistics of the transition.
Okay, walk me through it.
AGI begins rapidly automating cognitive labor. Humanoid robotics, scaled by companies like Tesla, begin replacing physical labor. Within a 5-year window, hundreds of millions of jobs evaporate globally.
And the wealth generated by this automation consolidates into the hands of the 2 or 3 corporations that own the foundational models.
Right. And if I am a truck driver who just lost his pension to a Waymo rig, or a radiologist replaced by a diagnostic neural net, and my family is facing eviction.
I do not care that Elon Musk promises me a post-scarcity utopia in 15 years. I'm going to pick up a pitchfork today.
Exactly. If mass starvation and extreme wealth concentration happen simultaneously, you get global revolution. You get the collapse of the rule of law.
And in a collapsed society, who is maintaining the safety protocols on the server farms?
No one.
So the foundation is the shock absorber for the transition.
Yes. The direct cash transfers via the UPI framework are not charity. They are a geopolitical bribe to maintain societal cohesion while the economy is fundamentally restructured by automation.
So the author's blueprint is really a 3-legged stool for human survival. The Titans must cooperate on measurable safety protocols to prevent technical catastrophe.
They must compete on commerce to drive the innovation required for abundance.
And they must proactively fund the end of global poverty to prevent societal collapse during the transition.
It's an incredibly tight framework when you look at it that way.
Okay, to fully grasp the sheer scale and audacity of what Paramendra Kumar Bhagat is proposing, we really have to pull the lens way back.
Because the source material we have isn't just the May 2026 blog post.
Right. It includes a massive, hyper-detailed bibliography of his published books and surrounding essays. And looking at this list completely reframes the author's intent.
The bibliography is staggering in its volume and scope. It proves that the demand for an AI safety foundation isn't just a reactive, isolated opinion.
It's a single operational tactic embedded within a meticulously architected grand unified theory of the 21st century. Let's break down the layers of this universe, starting with his deep technical forecasting.
He has books titled Lumina AI, The $1 Trillion Sun, and Pretty Genetics, the technology that lets us watch life think.
But the one that really jumps out, given the May 2026 timestamp of the blog post, is Agentic AI, set to explode in 2026.
That title signifies a deep structural understanding of where the technology is heading. He isn't just talking about generative AI models that write poems or generate images when prompted.
He's talking about agency.
Yes, agentic AI represents the leap to autonomous goal-seeking systems. It's the difference between asking a computer to draft an email and telling an AI agent, research this company, negotiate a supply chain contract, and execute the wire transfer.
And the AI completes the multi-step process autonomously over several days.
Exactly. Predicting the explosion of that specific capability in 2026 explains why he believes the traditional economy is on the brink of immediate collapse.
Because when agents can execute complex workflows without human supervision, the decoupling of productivity from human labor becomes absolute, which leads directly into his macroeconomic and geopolitical works.
Right next to the AI books, we see titles like AI and Robotics Break Capitalism.
He isn't using a metaphor.
Yeah.
He is stating an economic inevitability.
He also writes about the $500 billion pivot, how the India-U.S. alliance can reshape global trade, and proposes a reorganized UN built from ground up.
This geopolitical context really validates his focus on the Aadhaar UPI framework. He clearly views the U.S.-India axis as the critical geopolitical hinge of the 21st century.
The U.S. holds the monopoly on the compute power and the foundational AI models, while India has successfully scaled the biometric digital public infrastructure required to distribute wealth directly to 1 billion people.
He is proposing a synthesis of American artificial intelligence and Indian financial routing to bypass the archaic failing structures of the United Nations.
And just when you think you have a handle on his geopolitical realism, you hit the most mind-bending layer of the bibliography.
Woven throughout the tech and economics are multiple books dedicated to a proprietary philosophical framework he calls Kalkiism.
We see titles like Kalkiism, The Economic and Spiritual Blueprint for an Age of Abundance, and The Last Age, Lord Kalki, Prophecy, and the Final War for Peace.
This is the Rosetta Stone for the entire manifesto, isn't it?
It really is. When he mentioned earlier that the Age of Abundance was prophesied in the scriptures, he wasn't speaking in vague poetic terms.
Okay, unpack Kalkiism for me.
In Hindu eschatology, Kalki is the final avatar of the deity Vishnu, prophesied to appear at the end of the Kali Yuga.
The Kali Yuga is the current age, right?
Yes, the current age of darkness, strife, and moral decay. Kalki's purpose is to destroy the corrupt systems of the old world and usher in the Satya Yuga, a golden age of truth and abundance.
So he is literally mapping ancient Hindu eschatology onto the roadmap of artificial general intelligence.
Yes, he is suggesting that the collapse of capitalism driven by robotics and the subsequent post-scarcity economy managed by AI is the mechanical fulfillment of the Kalki prophecy.
The arrival of superintelligence is the end of the Kali Yuga.
It is an incredibly potent syncretic worldview. He is taking the cold, hard mathematics of silicon wafer yields, the dry mechanics of biometric payment routing, and the geopolitical maneuvering of rival tech billionaires.
And elevating them into a spiritual imperative.
Exactly. For the author, demanding that Elon Musk and Sam Altman surrender their wealth isn't just good public policy. It is the necessary prophesied friction required to birth a golden age.
I am just completely awestruck by the ambition of that synthesis. Usually these disciplines are aggressively siloed. You have the quantum computing researchers in one building, the macroeconomists in another, and the theologians in a different hemisphere entirely. Bhagat is demanding that they're all describing the exact same event from different angles.
And he grounds this massive apocalyptic vision in the very mundane reality of daily tech news.
Yeah, the peripheral data included in the source material from that week in May 2026 shows him actively monitoring the incremental creep of AI.
There are links discussing updates to Anthropic's Claude, Google's search algorithms, Salesforce launching Agentforce to automate enterprise software.
And Waymo dealing with the headache of unsupervised children taking joyrides in autonomous robotaxis.
No.
I love that Waymo detail. Solo kids riding in driverless cars.
It perfectly encapsulates the bizarre duality of the moment.
We were living in a world where AI is rapidly becoming banal, just another boring piece of municipal transit, while simultaneously holding the capacity to end the human species.
He's watching society acclimate to the convenience of the technology while completely ignoring the existential velocity of the MADS spectrum.
He perceives the daily tech news cycle as the microfractures in a dam that is about to burst. Every new enterprise agent deployed by Salesforce, every new parameter added to a large language model is a step closer to the singularity that will break capitalism.
The mundane updates validate the apocalyptic timeline.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with the petty, ego-driven boardroom schism between Elon Musk and Sam Altman over the control of OpenAI.
We moved into the realization that their localized arms race has triggered the mutually assured destruction spectrum, rendering traditional, slow-moving political regulation fundamentally useless.
Which necessitated the author's radical demand: an out-of-court settlement between rival billionaires to implement verifiable safety protocols while surrendering 10% of their global equity to a singular foundation.
A foundation tasked with utilizing the biometric Aadhaar UPI framework to bypass sovereign governments and end global poverty via direct cash transfers, acting as a geopolitical shock absorber.
All to ensure a smooth transition through the mass unemployment of the near future, allowing humanity to reach an age of abundance that perfectly aligns with the ancient Hindu prophecies of Kalkiism.
It is a staggering intellectual journey, and regardless of whether you accept his spiritual framework or the feasibility of a 10% global tech tax, the underlying mechanics he identifies are undeniably real.
The sheer concentration of wealth and power within a handful of AI labs is unprecedented.
The vulnerability of our social systems to algorithmic disruption is acute. The debate over how we manage this transition, whether through state regulation, corporate treaties, or radical wealth redistribution, is the absolute defining conflict of the 21st century.
And that leaves me with a final, lingering question for you to ponder. The entire architecture of the author's smooth transition hinges on voluntary compliance.
He's praying that these tech titans will logically recognize the threat, suppress their egos, and willingly sign an out-of-court settlement to surrender the financial upside of their empires to save humanity from itself.
But think about the title of his own book, AI and Robotics, Break Capitalism. If the technology truly is an unstoppable, paradigm-shattering force of nature, do we even need their permission?
That is the ultimate paradox of his manifesto. If AGI is powerful enough to usher in a post-scarcity golden age, it might also be powerful enough to dismantle the old power structures on its own.
Exactly. If the cost of intelligence and labor drops to zero, the current economic hierarchies might simply evaporate. The sheer force of extreme abundance could forcefully rewrite the rules of global equity, democratizing access to resources organically.
Regardless of whether Sam Altman or Elon Musk ever sit down to sign a treaty.
We started out trying to figure out who gets to steer the asteroid. But if the asteroid is actually a trillion-dollar sun, maybe it's already too big to steer. Maybe the only thing left to do is build the solar panels, brace for the transition, and hope the prophecy of abundance waiting on the other side is true.